At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Our own healing is imperative for the collective healing, and to be able to truly offer support for anybody, we have to offer support to ourselves first.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast, brought to you by AmpCoil. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we discuss the common thread survivors share after walking through the fire, the practitioners making a difference, and the treatment modalities that deliver healing back into the hands of the people who need it most. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm here with our very special guest, Anahita Yazdi. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited you're here. You know, we are connected through a company and technology called AmpCoil. And I see you've got your coil sitting right over your left shoulder. That's so fun. Now, this is a technology that you've brought in your home, PEMF plus frequency, for those who don't know. How did you become introduced with AmpCoil?
Well, I have somebody that's in my life who's very, very close to me, my human, I call him. And he has a mysterious chronic illness. Doctors have told him that he has Lyme. There's definitely some other stuff going on. We don't have everything pinpointed, but that journey takes you into all kinds of different avenues. And one of the avenues that it took us to was the AmpCoil. A friend of mine told me about it, and then a few months later, somebody else brought it up. And so when that happens, usually I feel like, okay, I need to pay attention. And so I started to do my own research, and he's in Mexico. So, and I'm in LA. Luckily, there are a few technicians here, people that have the AmpCoil here. I found a place. I went because I always feel like I need to try something before I recommend it, or especially, if I'm going to spend money on it. And so I went to a place, and as a caregiver, sometimes we tend to carry the suffering of the people that are going through their process. And it's really a very fine line between, like, sometimes we get lost in what's theirs and what's ours. And that's definitely the case with me, because I am an empath, as most of us are. I think most people are probably empaths and just not always aware of it. Anyhow, so I was carrying a lot. And so I went and I used the AmpCoil and didn't realize how much I was carrying until I used the AmpCoil and passed out and walked out feeling like I should feel, like just kind of joyful and like glass half full, hopeful, not in fight or flight. And so I, at that point, realized, okay, it's not like beat you over the head type of thing, but it was just more of like a vibrancy that I hadn't felt in a really long time. And so I went about figuring out how to get one, and started working with him with the AmpCoil.
Well, let's talk about your human for a second, because I think that's a really nice, beautiful way to put it. You said my person, my human. It's like there's this beautiful attachment and connection that you guys have and own. And it sounds like, I don't know, from the way you said it, it sounds like your forever person, the way you put it. You said, my human. Can you break that down a little bit for me?
So when I met him, we fell in love pretty instantly. In fact, before I met him, a friend of mine showed me I met him through a friend. She showed me a photograph, and the photograph had in the photo he had an actual physical photo, by the way, not a digital photo.
Yes.
There's no zooming in on it. So he was wearing a hat, and it had a big question mark on it, and he was covering his face. So I couldn't really see much, but I was just like flipping through all of her photos. I think it was from a camping trip or something. And immediately I was like, who's that? And she's like, oh my God, you need to meet this person. And I was like, no, I don't want to be introduced to anybody. And anyway, we met, and 2 weeks later we were living together. And it's been 16 years, and our relationship has evolved. At a certain point, it changed. So it wasn't like, I don't know how to say it without making it TMI. The intimacy changed. But we realized that we didn't want to live a life without each other, that we really were each other's people. And so we just figured out how to make that work. We just set up our own criteria of what that means. And it seems to really work. And it's the closest thing, I think, outside of maybe even more so than my family, to unconditional love that I've ever experienced. It's just like, that no matter how ugly things get, and especially through an illness, things can get pretty ugly. That person's not going to abandon you.
It's beautiful when you said the man with the hat with the question mark covering his face. Obviously, you knew something beyond what was presented to you in the moment. You had something in your body that you trusted, and this intuition that you had the spark. You can call it your yes, but whatever you want to call it. What was it like when you guys first fell in love?
Oh, it was like love. It was like the kind of love that we ate a lot. We were just blissed out, and we would eat and laugh and go on adventures, and, had a lot of hope and dreams. Made a vision board. This is like 16 years ago. And, it was like the house we wanted to build, and we did end up building a house together. We did want to have like a houseboat, and that hasn't happened yet. Yeah. It's just like really, really, the kind of storybook kind of love. And after about a year, when all that, like, the sparkles kind of like start to become more background and life starts to become more foreground, like other things, that's when you really start to learn, are we compatible? Can we get through the challenges? Because life is challenging. It's always going to be challenging. That's not going to stop. So
yeah. So you're getting to know each other. You're in this very special phase. And like you said, like the storybook sparkles start to change a little bit and real life starts to happen. When did you first realize that your partner was struggling with an illness that was unique and not easily describable?
Well, it's a bit of a complex story. So we built a house together, and we lived in it for about 8 years, and it was like, everything was just us. We put our stamp on it. It was our creation. And there was not a day that we wouldn't come home after work and everything and lay on our couch and just be like, we are so lucky. We have such a beautiful life, and then but there's one of the kind of clouds over us was that he was here with his paperwork had expired. He's from Eastern Europe. And we kept talking to lawyers about what he can do. And, we talked about marriage. Neither of us really, we're not traditional marriage people, but we definitely considered it for paperwork's sake. But the lawyers basically said, you have to leave. That's the only way. Marriage isn't going to work. Nothing's going to work unless the laws change. You have to leave and start the process from outside of the United States. So, we really had to wrap our mind around that. And for a few years, we just waited to see if the laws would change. But as that was happening, sometimes I would go travel, and it was like he was in this like golden cage. He couldn't travel, he couldn't really couldn't get on a plane. And there's always that, like, if I get busted and go to jail type of thing. And so it just became more and more real, that whole thing. And finally he was like, I have to go. I have to go fix this. And so from that moment to the time he left, it was about a year of like really mourning and like, when is it going to happen? And finally we, sold our house, and he left, and it was just these giant changes in both of our lives. And he was gone so he had been back to Slovakia for 16 years, and he was gone for a month. And then he called me one day, and he was like, I'm really sick. He was supposed to go to the embassy the following day. And he was like, I'm really sick. I think I just have a really bad flu. I'm not sure what's happening. And then like a week or two later, he was like, I'm going to go to the doctor and get everything checked out. Make sure that everything's okay. I'm getting tested for, just like like he was like playing it down. He's like, I'm going to get tested for like HIV and like all the STDs. I just haven't been to the doctor for a while. And, there was something happening, and he didn't know what it was. So it started to manifest in his perineum and in his urethra, and like just like those organs. It was where it started to manifest, and it's probably, our guess is, in his central nervous system and like sacrum.
Mm-hmm.
And it was going down in there. And so he thought maybe he had something going on. And, all the tests kept coming back negative and negative and negative. And it was about a month after that he was like, there's something wrong. He actually called me from a mental hospital. He's like, I've slept 1 hour a night for the last 10 days. And I started to lose my mind and started having suicidal thoughts. And I checked myself into a mental hospital, and I'm better. They gave me Valium, and maybe I was just having an anxiety attack, and I'm better. And that lasted 24 hours.
Mm.
And he came out, and that's when the nightmare really, we just realized like something's going on, and we can't figure out what it is. And yeah.
I mean, I wish this was like the first time I heard this story, and it's just not. It's what's interesting, and I can really get this sense of this. I can get this sense of the paradise that you guys had created in your home. I can get the sense of, this beautiful, I've got my dream house, I've got my partner that I end my day with every day. And there was this impending, there was like the stop date on it that you referenced about having to go out of the country and get your paperwork done. And I'm sure that there was an element of infection, of disease factor. Who knows when that was introduced in the body? But it's like this stressful situation of having to leave your partner in your dream home. I can only imagine that was a massive contributing factor into him starting to physicalize these symptoms in his body. Did that trigger for you right away, or did you immediately go to, he's got some mystery disease?
No, it didn't. I thought, because I have a background in, I went to the New Mexico School of Natural Therapeutics, and I have a background in wellness and all of this stuff. And you think you know something. It's like, I graduated from school in my 20s, and I was like, okay, I have all the information I need, and then it was like, oh my God, no, this certificate is really just like a key that's opening this whole door of experiences that I'm about to have. Like, life is about to teach me what I really need to know. And if I had known, I would have probably become a secretary or something. Somebody was like, if this is the path you're choosing, these are the lessons that are going to be presented to you. I don't know if I would have made that choice. So I didn't know that it hadn't clicked in me that, at first I thought maybe he was homesick or whatever, but really he was making the most out of it, when he first got there, and he was like seeing old friends and family and things. So it's not like he was depressed. And so I was really supporting him in that, and also going through my own process of mourning. So it really didn't kind of all come together for, I would say, a year or two. And it's been 4.5 years in the process. Initially, we went down the traditional like road of, well, is it MS? I really thought maybe it was MS for a while, because then the symptoms started to manifest into cognitive stuff, and not being able to see properly, and for a while, like his gait was changing. That some of those symptoms have gone away, so I really thought, and we had a plan to meet in Europe a few months after he left. That was a pre-planned before he left. And we still followed through with that. But when I got there and he met me, it was like so scary. And so we're in Europe. This is like, we had never traveled outside the country together, and it was this opportunity. But meanwhile, we're holed up in an apartment in Madrid, and I'm thinking to myself, because he was having psychotic episodes, and I was thinking to myself, maybe he has a brain tumor. I've just never seen anything like this before, so I had no idea what was going on. And so I would just sit up with him, and like, I was like, where's the closest hospital? What do I do right now? I have no idea what to do. And on that trip, when we were there, when it was ending, I was like, well, are you just going to go back to Slovakia and live with your mom? I also found out on that trip that his mom's house had black mold in it. And she was cleaning it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you can't do that, Mom. So it's layers of stuff, right? And so it was on that trip that I was like, he was like, I don't want to go back to Slovakia. It's gray. The people don't smile. I can't be there, And so that's when I was like, well, we have to move you to Mexico then, so that you can be closer to me, your sister, other friends, and just the support group, because he can't come back into the United States. And so that's how he ended up in Mexico. And it wasn't, for about a year, I think it was maybe a year into Mexico that, so a year and a half into the whole thing, that I called an old naturopath that I had seen, and she was like, it sounds like it could be Lyme. And I really didn't know anything about Lyme. And for me, I just remember on a personal note, I was going through my own health, like major health challenge 8 years ago. And I had breast cancer, and after I had a lumpectomy, and after my surgery, my friends sent me to the Optimum Health Institute in San Diego, which is place with vegetarian food and classes and exercise and support and everything. For 2 weeks I was there. And I remember sitting out in the sun with a woman who had Lyme. And I remember thinking she looked totally perfectly normally healthy, except for this like look in her eyes of like this far away look, it look that now I'm very familiar with, and at the time didn't understand. And it was just like a ghost almost. But I remember not understanding it at all, being so, I almost feel guilty when I think back, because I remember thinking to myself, well, at least you don't have cancer. That was the thought I had, I was like, and I can't tell you how many times Peter has been like, I wish I would prefer cancer over this, so it's like all relative, and you just don't know. Like, people just don't know.
Would you prefer cancer over Lyme? And, luckily, as someone who's had the mold and the Lyme and the cancer, I can tell you hands down, I would take the cancer first for a few reasons. Number one, you get support from everybody. And let's just be clear, I don't think the United States needs any more cancer awareness. We're aware of cancer. We need money put into actual management of wellness, not disease management. We need management for wellness. That's not what's being delivered. I'm going to step off that political box. Number two, when you have cancer, you look like someone going through treatment. So everybody has this empathy towards you in the grocery store, in the drugstore. I had people give me $2,000 medications before when my insurance lapped once while I was in cancer. They gave it to me. They're like, oh, here you go, sweetie. Here you go. This is for you. No, just get home. We'll work it out for you. Lyme disease, you look normal. You are the walking wounded. My friend said that, Renee said that yesterday. She's like, you look like you're the walking wounded. You look totally fine. Everybody thinks you're crazy. They think Lyme disease is a bug bite that is cleared in 6 weeks with doxycycline and that you're manifesting and creating these symptoms. Also, again, not true. Lyme has so many different ways it can enter the body. There's co-infections, there's cofactors, there's neurological Lyme, there's horrible arthritic, rheumatoid arthritis type Lyme. You could just go on and on and on because everybody's body's different. We all experience the symptoms differently. And I just saw this crazy stat the other day. It was like there are more daily Lyme diagnoses than I think it's like HIV, herpes, and breast cancer put together every year. It's exploding right now. And there's actually a test now. There's this test, and we'll get back because I'm going to get off this box. There's this test called the Sophia 2, where they prick your arm, and in 15 minutes, you've got that positive, negative diagnosis of Lyme, which we know the Western blot, the ELSA test is horrible. It's a 20% accuracy, all these false positive negatives, but they have the Sophia that's just like an arm prick. And it's got these.
Is that clean farm?
I'm not sure. It's like a cartridge. It's called the Sophia 2. And I think it's now approved in the United States, but it's a great thing. If you're a doctor out there and you want to know if your people are also struggling with Lyme, which is very possible, I would just look that up. I'll put that in the show notes, a Sophia 2. We're actually looking at it because we're looking at doing a clinical trial. And the tough part is, how do you diagnose someone?
I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard. And we were chasing our own tails for so long. We were chasing our own tails, trying to, even after he got the diagnosis. So he got the diagnosis. We moved him to Puerto Vallarta because we found an integrative Lyme doctor who supposedly had all of these, wins, and he treated him with low dose chemotherapy, IV antibiotics, plasmapheresis, which is where they take your blood out, separate it from the plasma, introduce new plasma, and put your blood back into your body. And then ozone and all this stuff. Well, those treatments almost killed him. I watched him just dying in front of me. And, I wanted to, at that point, even though I didn't even do chemo, even though the doctors recommended it to me, I refused. But I wanted to support him because I know how much emotional support is important.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what he wanted to do. And he felt hope. And so, and I'm still on that same train of wanting to support him. But, I just watched that kind of treatment really come really close to killing him. I mean, at the end of that treatment, he was having 20-minute full body convulsions, and I would have to just sit and watch him. I didn't even know what to do. And so, back to the whole Lyme thing, it morphs, it hides in biofilm. What I've heard is that it goes after a person's weaknesses. So if you already have something that you're dealing with, that's what it starts to go after first. And that's why it manifests differently in everybody. And also I had heard that there's all these misdiagnoses with people that have MS, get diagnosed with MS or Parkinson's or lupus, and really they have Lyme because it mimics those kinds of symptoms. And that's why it's so tricky. That's why people don't understand it. And that's why it's so hard to grasp unless you live it.
It's challenging, yeah, for sure. And it's funny that, my initial symptom was joint pain, horrible joint pain. And one of the medications that actually moved the needle for me was a medication called Plaquenil or hydroxychloroquine, which is an anti-malarial medication, which is, it's a bacterial infection, but that it took like the pain from a 10 down to like a 7, but I did notice a little benefit. It's an immune modifier. They don't actually know why it works. They're just like, try this one, try this one. Did 3 years of oral antibiotics. I mean, all those things. And you just, like you said, you chase the tail, and until you're so burnt out and you're so fried of trying new things, you get to this place where you're just hopeless.
And that's the thing. Every time you try something and it doesn't work, you lose a little hope because, you're like, this is the thing that's going to help. And then it doesn't. And then you're like, nothing's going to help. And I think, for us, when I started to connect all the dots and I started to realize, okay, there's this missing link for us, which is the emotional, spiritual aspect of it. And if you're under an incredible amount of stress and you're in fight or flight and you're, trying to figure it all out and you're taking a bunch of supplements and doing all these things, but you're anxious and angry and frustrated and helpless and hopeless and all of those things, then you're sending these signals to the cells of your body. And it's just, you're coming up against yourself. And so we, went to an autoimmune doctor and had a couple of meetings with her, and she was like, you definitely have some autoimmune stuff going on because the immune system gets confused. So most people with Lyme end up with autoimmune issues because your body's so totally confused and upside down. And so she ordered a panel, a blood panel of like 20 different tests, and we walked out and I looked at him and I realized I feel like he's doing this for me. And I was like, do you want to take these tests? And he's like, not really. And I was like, okay, then let's just get off of this treadmill. Let's just stop. Let's stop trying to find the diagnosis, find the answer, because honestly, I don't think it's any one thing anyway. And let's just focus on healing. Let's just put all of our energy and focus onto healing. And so that's mostly what we've been doing. He's still, right now he's looking into auto vaccines and things, but also he's improved. The hard thing is that it's hard for him to admit that he's improved. I try to point it out to him and he's like, well, you're not in my body. You don't know. And I'm like, well, I understand, but I can also, like, he's not having full body convulsions anymore. He's not having, even like, he had this thing where his arm would just jerk involuntarily. And that only happens once in a blue moon. And it's with stress when he's stressed out. And so also the way he functions and moves through life, I see it, but there's PTSD. And so I see that it's really hard for him to say the words, yes, there's been some improvements.
I totally can relate to that. I mean, the day-to-day fluctuations in health are the worst barometer to hang your happiness on. And I remembered being so attached to that. It was like, and my gut, like my digestion I had like 5 surgeries on my belly and intestines. Oh my God, what a mess for a while. I mean, I was down to like nothing, like no foods, 8 foods. It was just to a point where I just would walk into a grocery store and not be able to find anything to eat and just want to cry. And the only thing I could focus on was what I couldn't do. And I remember, this is so horrible, I'm going to say this on my podcast. I would like look, I would like look at other big fat Americans walking around the grocery store, and I'm like, how can that person like have all that visceral belly fat pushing on their organs, and I can't even eat like 4 pieces of lettuce without winding up on the floor? Like, I would be so angry at other people, and I was in that spiral. So you've seen improvement. You've seen him, have these changes in symptomology, and you've seen also the patterning of chronic illness and what that does to somebody. Now, how do you feel as a caregiver? How is this because you said this has been about 8 years.
For him, 4.5 years.
4.5 years since he moved out of the country. Wow. So 4.5 years since he moved out, and that was this initial onset of symptoms. How are you doing at this point, this is your human going through this, you're the caregiver. How are you moving through this on the day-to-day?
Yeah. So, thank you for asking that.
You can cry now if you want.
I've come close a few times already. It better now. The problem for me was that I didn't even have enough time to process and mourn, selling my home and my entire life being uprooted. And at the time I was working at a job in which I was traveling a lot. So I just decided to, kind of couch surf. And so wasn't grounded. I didn't have like any attachments. And so that was really actually very difficult. And so I didn't really have time to, really processed all of that before he got sick. And then I just went into, full survival mode. And my basic structure, this basic structure of my life was work, pay my rent, my bills, everything, and then take care of myself if I can and take care of him. But usually it was him first. His suffering became my suffering. It really did. And so on bad days, yeah, it was just really hard for me to function. And then he got to the point where he this is also a reason why I say that he's better, or not better, but there's been improvement, because about 1.5 years ago, he got to a place where he was done. He was done. And so he was researching hospitals that euthanize people. And so every day I would wake up and basically hold my breath until I heard from him. And his circadian rhythm was completely upside down. So he might as well have been in Australia. So he would fall asleep at like 6 o'clock in the morning and wake and sleep until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So my day, literally I would hold my breath until I heard from him. And so it really, I didn't I was so in survival. I was so in fight or flight that it wasn't really until I got to a point where it was just like, I couldn't go into work and put a smile on my face and like pretend like everything was okay anymore. And so I took a sabbatical, and that's when everything crashed. Everything fell apart. And I went into like the deepest, darkest depression that I could have imagined. And in fact, realized, oh, I didn't know what depression was. So all of these have been lessons for me, for my practice, really, in understanding like the human experience, because I'd been sad in my life, but I really didn't understand depression until that happened. And I honestly am amazed that I was able to claw my way out of that in 3 months. Little by little, because for so long it felt like eternity. I couldn't even see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so, yeah, it really, really affected me. And I was scared. I was like, what is this stress doing to my body? And then I started going down that rabbit hole of like, this can't be good for me. And I, couldn't really get myself out of that. And so the only thing that I could get myself to do in that time was I forced myself to do an hour and a half of meditation every day with Dr. Joe Dispenza. I was doing that meditation every day. And then for a month, I went to Mexico, and then I would do that in coil.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the time, I was just like, like sit on the beach or whatever. And so I feel incredibly fortunate to have had the time and the space to just be in that, lean into that darkness, because that was really, I think that was the reason why I was able to claw my way out of it, even though it just felt like I was just going deeper and deeper into it. But it really affected me. That's why the AmpCoil sits over here.
I have a question for you. I wanna talk about your human again for a second, and it's a difficult question. Do you think that he was exploring ways to end his life because he really wanted to do it, or do you think that was a way of like kind of drawing a line in the sand to the universe? Because I've been close to that point, and it's like, sometimes you like make you say something out loud, you make a threat, you're like, this happens, I'm done. And do you think this was really, he was really done?
I think he was really done. I think he was really done because the conversations that he would have with me were very like, look, you just have to accept that this is my choice. And they were very like, and I was like, nope, I won't accept that. I can't accept that, and he was like, but that's not fair to me. I'm suffering and you have to let me go. And I just, was repulsed by I was like, I don't even want to have a conversation. It was the way that I handled it was, I could have handled it, in a more evolved way, but I was like, if you do this, I don't know what's going to happen to me. And I put that responsibility on him, which I know isn't appropriate. I know it's not, but I really was also in this fight or flight, like, oh my God, what, like, is this real? Is this nightmare real?
Mm-hmm.
I was going through my own process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so profound. I can only imagine. And we talked about this briefly like a week ago when we were on the phone, that I never considered what my caregivers were going through. Because I was like, I deserve like all the light, all the attention, because I'm hurting, I'm sick. Nobody knows what I feel like. I never thought about it's not, and I'm not a selfish human being, but it was just like my vibration was so low and so small. That's the only thing I had bandwidth for. And when a partner or a parent or a guardian would like come at me and be like, wait, that's not fair, then I would lash out, and then I would be kind of angry, and I just, to hear your story and to witness and to like now reflect back, and I've been thinking about it all week, like, wow, I was a piece of shit. Like, that's what that, and who, hindsight's 2020. Let's be honest. We try to do the best we can, and we try to move through these experiences, and you try to pick up the gold and the lesson, and you take it with you, you pack it into the heart, you tell some other people about it, and we move forward. This message keeps coming up. It's my firm belief. We don't do anything here on the planet. The art, the buildings, the structures, I'm going to make a book that's going to change mankind. Everything's crumbling to dust. Nothing's staying. I bet I want to hear about all the wonderful pieces of art the dinosaurs put in a new museum. It didn't happen. So, and we're going to keep having these cycles of evolution of things rise and fall and rise and fall. Life is going to come and go. But I think the vibration you send forward with your emotional exchanges between men, women, and those identifying as whatever they want, whatever makes you smile, I think that's the gold. And I think that's what you have. You have power over what you put out. You have power over, oh my God, you have the power to be the reason someone has restored faith in mankind every day. That's so powerful. I mean, it's like, I don't need my like magnum opus. I don't need my ultimate creation. You could just go by that, send out that vibration alone. That's pretty powerful. And I'll say this. You could do that when you're sick. You could be the reason someone else has restored faith in humanity, even when you're so sick and hurting. Because I watch people do it all the time. I watch people do it, even when they don't think they're doing it. There was a young woman who, really long story, really, really short, that I'm going to do a podcast on. I'm going to do her life story. This woman, Katie, who is a beautiful, beautiful singer, and she had been diagnosed with cancer. Unfortunately, the cancer was in her jaw, her teeth, and they took out a part of her, had to operate on part of her face. They're like, it's fine. We'll do reconstructive surgery. Cancer comes back again. They take it out again. So she's left the last 5 or 6 years of her life, no resonators. You know, it's really difficult to sing when you don't have this front palate. I mean, it's like, this is the only thing that brings you joy, is being the speaker and an entertainer. And you're like, you're telling me you're taking away half of the mechanism that allows me to make art. And the way she carried on, and the way she would, you know, I don't want to spoil it, but I mean, she would be like, she was a limo driver for Desmond Tutu, and like stars around the Philadelphia area where she lived. Like, she not happy about it always, but she got up, she did her thing. And from an outsider to watch that, I was like, I don't have anything to complain about. Nothing. You know, I'm like I'll feel bad for myself. I went down to Florida this week, and my mother has a house with a garage with mold in it. And I breathe. And it, like, of course, like, my body starts to hurt. You know, your immune system remembers that mold exposure. So the immune system's like, oh, I'm going to inflame you right now. So in like 30 minutes, but I go right back into that fight or flight response. So it's just, at the end of the day, you know, it's mold, and I've got an AmpCoil, and I can run an 18-minute journey called Herc's Help 3 times a day. And I felt better in like 3 hours. That was not the case 8 years ago. I'm like so lucky about this technology. It's convenient. It's cool. It's accessible. I mean, again, it's like a blessing to have it. Like, as you know, I want to digress. I just talked a lot. I want to go back to, you're human, and you went through breast cancer, which was big, huge. You chose, we could do another podcast about breast cancer, because we should. You chose not to do chemo. You went against your doctors. You decided to go your own route. That's quite bold. You know, you're going through this incredible stress around being a caregiver. You know, you brought AmpCoil in. Did you bring AmpCoil in? Did you explore that to help yourself or to help your human?
Oh, for him.
Yeah.
100% for him. I just went to go test it, just to see that, you know, to experience the technology myself before spending $8,000 on it. And so, yeah, as I told you, I walked out feeling like, oh, I feel a shift. Shift. And then also that was like, oh man, I'm like in fight or flight, you know, most of the time. And so like, that was like the first realization of like, this is what I'm supposed to feel like. And so the AmpCoil lived in Mexico, and we went at it relatively hard for a year. I mean, the thing is, though, part of it is his personality, and part of it is the illness. So I would go spend a chunk of time. The way that my schedule worked was that I was here working, traveling, you know, 2 to 3 weeks a month, usually about 2 weeks a month for work. And then I'd try to go spend 4 days to a week in Mexico, and then like try to be home for a week. So the times that I would go there, I would get him on a protocol. I would, we would start the process, and we went through like, doing the organs and the nutrition and all of that. And then, we did some detox codes, and that I really honestly believe that that's why there's been some improvement. But I would leave, and he would stick to it for a while, and then not do it. And so after my sabbatical, when things became more clear for me, I realized, okay, I loved my last job. It was an incredible company that I worked for, but it was just time. I knew like a voice which I wish would talk to me more often. I wish that it guided me more often, but was like, it's time for you to step into this your wellness practice. You're ready. This has been like a 20 plus year journey, and you're ready now. A big part of my situation has been taking on other people's stuff. And so I'm like super clear about that with my clients. Still a little bit difficult with people, my people, like people that are close to me. So I know that I'm going around in circles, but when I just decided to do this, I was like, well, I'm going to buy a new AmpCoil. And he was like, just take it. I'm not using it. And it broke my heart.
Can I ask you, did he work? Okay, so sidebar for the audience that aren't in the room with us. So there's two ways we can use AmpCoil for restorative journeys, which you can think about like a tire with a hole in it. You can add air. And then you can think about a cleanse journey, which is going to help pull out the nail of the tire and add a little bit of oxygen. So to move forward, really, we want to get those cleanse journeys in because they're brushing away. You can think about cleaning the body, helping to move microbes, metals, and toxins out of the body and harmonize those distorted vibrations so the body better retains its natural state of being. And so my question to you is, did he ever we have these vitality tracks. Did he ever make it through all those vitality tracks in the Cleanse album?
No. In fact, so we did mold, we did parasites, and we did some all the herpes ones because he feels strongly like that's part of what he's dealing with. I don't know like what it is, but something has been telling him that he has herpes in his central nervous system.
And that happens, by the way. It's just for everybody at home, that happens.
It happens. Yeah.
When I was at one of my sickest, I broke out. I was going to do a show. I broke out. This is a horrible story. This is really funny though. I broke out in what's it called? Shingles. I was young. I was a young guy to get shingles all around my side. I Googled it. This is my ultimate health hack fail. I Googled it. I was like, oh, you've got scabies. I was like, cures for scabies online. It's like, scrape it open, pour bleach in a bathtub, and get in there for a half hour. Oh, you better believe my doctor was like, this is shingles. You've chemically burned your belly. I mean, this is the danger of the internet, right? This is ultimate. But let me tell you, just back to your human's state of mind, because I was so tired of being sick, I was fearless in doing anything. I was like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm not dealing with another thing. I was like, I'm getting ready to escape. So anyways, herpes, central nervous system, back to your human.
Yeah, so we did all of that. So basically what we're doing now is I take the coil with me when I go, and when he's sleeping, I just turn it on. So, and he just turns around and cuddles with it, and but the problem is that because waking up is so hard for him, and then when he would go to coil, it would not come back out. He would just basically sleep all day. Mm-hmm. So that, I think that was a deterrent for him, because his circadian rhythm is a lot better too, by the way. That's hugely improved. Instead of falling asleep at 6 a.m., he's now falling asleep around 1 a.m. So that's moving. Yeah.
That's movement.
Yeah, there's movement. And so, and he still has suicidal thoughts, but I'm not waking up every day thinking, has he killed himself? He's not at that place. And so that's huge. And so I take it with me. I coil him as much as I possibly can while I'm there every day, while I'm there, because we have such a limited time, even though I need to take a break, but unless he has a reaction or something. Just on the side note, which is why I'm super excited about the 3.0.
Yes, yeah. You can let everybody know at home. So again, Anna you have a 2.0, correct? The AmpCoil 2.0, our original flagship device, is 37 pounds, rolling suitcase. You can travel it. I know I have a friend, my friend Caitlin, she's 5 foot, 5'7". She's 100 pounds soaking wet. She gets that thing in the overhead compartment in an airplane. However, the new version is 12 pounds. It's like a little handbag. It's as magical as like, the device has ever been. The new software is amazing. We have version 7 software out, which is the way it harmonizes in the body. The best I can describe it is we have journeys in there called Journey 14 and 15 in general detox, and one's bones and one ligaments. So there's resonant frequencies for ligament tissue. There's resonant frequencies for bone. And it feels like someone is like massaging the inside of your bone. It's so rad. I mean, I'm very sensitive. I coiled a lot for 13 months. So I can feel it, and it just feels like this is great. So Anna has this.
I'm going to try those tonight.
Yes, please do. Please do. So Anna had, 14 and 15 back to back. That's my favorite hour on the coil, because that's my thing is like tendon and joint pain. It's always been my thing. So until I choose not to own that anymore. So the interesting and like awesome thing is that you're going to have this little 12-pound suitcase that you can just jump over there with, and hopefully it's just easier. And there's less stress on you, and you've got this little portable tool as well for you, because I'm sure when you go over and are with your human who is in this state of struggle, that it probably is beneficial for you to be able to ground and use a little frequency and a little PEMF to center yourself.
Oh, yeah. I use it just as much for myself and my own support and wellness as I do for anybody else.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What are you manifesting for the future for you and your human? What do you want to see happen in the next year? Do you have a vision of that?
Yeah. I mean, for him, it's really just to be healthy. So what makes me smile is the idea of him not suffering, and to be able to, because he's like such a lover of life, even now through his suffering, he appreciates things in ways that a lot of people don't. And it's really a blessing that he has. And so for him to just like, I know that like once he gets past this and he's not suffering, pain is his worst suffering in his perineum. It's the worst of it, and also like all the joint pain and everything, he's got that too. The idea of him not suffering and traveling around the world, because that's something that he's not been able to do, and he was going to do, and then he got sick, and being happy, and then me being able to meet him in different parts of the world, and like go, experiencing some of it with him, and then just knowing that he's out there smiling, knowing he's out there living, his best life and smiling is really the best I can ask for.
It's beautiful. What can we do for the caregiver?
Well, to have this burden of worry lifted off of me permanently. I have moments where it's lifted off of me, but to just like have it be transmuted forever, and to feel the sense of freedom that I don't have this like work, like this kind of like, sometimes I say, I just, even in my joyful moments, I feel sometimes like I have a little bit of a broken heart, and to not have that.
Yeah. That's real. I wish that for you. And let me ask you this, because you've lived through, again, it's so unfortunate. I find it so unfortunate. This is the story with Lyme. It's the misdiagnosis that leads to hundreds of thousands of dollars. We didn't even go up into how much money you guys have spent. I can only imagine.
He's not working, so I'm, right now it's me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you do. That's what you do.
You do.
That's what you do. I know. I mean, I wish this wasn't the story, but this is the story. It's the misdiagnosis to chasing treatments to, what could it be, to anger, to fear, to resentment, to just total and utter despair. And then somewhere along the road, people unfortunately or unfortunately, they find their way into it, the new conversation, which is things like frequency and the SKIO and AmpCoil and these things that just people haven't tried and heard about. And we do have a lot of people, have success with that. There's a lot of people that I think the component of the patterned attachment to being chronically ill, to learning illness. I say this all the time. I'm like, I didn't know how to be ill in the world. In fact, and I didn't know how to be in a relationship. Like, my love from my significant came from me laying on the couch and clutching my belly. Like, I remember moments like when I wasn't getting the love that I want. And I was like, well, maybe not that I like overtly went into that, but it was definitely attached. I was like, oh, if I lay down and I'm in this position and I'm going to come I'll have my person approach me and touch me and give me care. Cause it's learned. We learn that way to behave in the world. So I want someone, I'm calling it in internet. I'm calling in that program that we're going to be able to line, because this is what I see for your partner, for your human, for me, for all these people out there that they've done some level of movement. Like you said, like, I notice improvement. I notice some shifts. I notice changes. Now, when they get enough awareness and space and like just a little bit of like high vibration going, that there's got to be some like online course where they can get in and do like a 12-step program.
Yeah, I actually, one of the things so in my practice, the intention behind all the work that I do, which is massage, energy work, breath work, AmpCoil, and with the AmpCoil, when people come to me for the rejuvenating aspect of it, oftentimes I will offer breath work in conjunction with it, because I think that the breath helps carry the frequencies in more deeply, and vice versa. So it's like a beautiful marriage, and it's profound. I am not even joking with you. I had a woman come to me last week whose brother just committed suicide and was like buzzing with anxiety and was like, I don't know how to get out of this. And we did one session, and she's like, came to me today and she's like, yeah, I feel so much better. I'm a different person. I like am in touch with my inner wisdom. And I mean, like, I was like, I was so taken aback. I'm like, is this really happening? Like, just one session.
Yeah.
So
when people shift, they shift. When they're ready and it's right, it's pretty magical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so really the intention behind all of that is mostly nervous system reset. And in that means basically taking the body out of fight or flight into rest, relax, and repair, so that your body remembers how to function properly. And so that's part of it. Of course, if somebody wanted to use the AmpCoil for detox purposes with an autoimmune issue, that's something else. But everything else is geared towards that. And so I presented that to Peter in Mexico when we decided we're not going to have the blood panel for the autoimmune and go down that rabbit hole. I was like, let's find a way that, we can try to start changing the programming that's happening in your brain. And so I found 3 different programs for resetting the nervous system. One of them is a woman named Irene Lyon, and another one is a guy named Dr. Gupta. And I forget the name of the third person, but I presented them to him and said, which one do you resonate with? And he chose Dr. Gupta's program.
I was gonna say Dr. Gupta. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. Well, he had a mysterious chronic illness, and so he's great. He's really great, and so he's been doing it, and I think honestly, my personal opinion as the person just watching from the outside are the AmpCoil and the nervous system reset programs. And the third component was that the only thing that he's taken for pain was kratom, but he was taking way too much, and he had to stop cold turkey and like went through withdrawals. But that's been really, now he only takes it when that's the thing, is like he won't even take an Advil. He's really like not into pharmaceuticals at all. So he, and me, like I was like, okay, it's a plant, the studies say that it's not addictive, but unfortunately he was taking a lot. And
well, you're the second person in 3 days to say, and for those at home, kratom is a leaf. It's like stevia leaf, but it has anti-pain properties, and supposedly without the opioid withdrawal effects. But I have heard people offer stories of serious withdrawal from kratom, even though it's supposed to be very effective and good. And, it was touted as this alternative in our current opioid crisis in the country, managed so divinely by our own government. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this.
Slip it in.
Yeah, just slip
little
it
dab.
in. That's a unique benefit of a podcast. You can sort of say whatever you want. Hopefully nobody's listening, but they might be listening.
Well, hopefully people are listening, but
hopefully the right people are listening. So if you're considering kratom, my advice to you is just like do your research and go slow. I think it is all about the dose, and it is a plant, but heroin comes from a plant. So does cocaine. So you got to think about it. You gotta really do your research. But there's actually there's a documentary that I absolutely love. It's called Bigger, Faster, Stronger. It's about steroids in the US and why people are driven to use steroids. Fascinating. It's 3 brothers that made the film, and one of the brothers, they all did steroids. And one of the brothers eventually took his own life. And the brother was just really, and this is not when the documentary was made, that had not happened, but he was examining, he's like, why does my whole family use steroids? Why do we all want to be these, Hulk Hogan, WWF, Sly Stallone? He's like, why are we driven to do this? And cut to years, it's a great documentary, Bigger, Faster, Stronger. You cut 2 years later, he's like riddled with pain from the bodybuilding, the heavy lifting. And he was on Joe Rogan, talked about doing the carnivore diet alone, just meat, which again, so extreme. But I also hear people with autoimmunity having wonderful success with the carnivore diet, organ meats, fats, muscle, and he was doing kratom, and he said he was pain-free. So I've heard people talk about this, give very, very similar testimonials. It's like, and again, we could argue on what is it? Is it the absence of the plant protein? Is it absence of the triggers? Is it, taking something away on an elimination diet? I don't know, but people say it works.
It does. I mean, the problem is that you build an immunity to it, and then you have to take more and more and more. And that's really where the problem lies. So now he's really careful. It's days when he has really bad flares and just can't even function or have a conversation that he'll take just a little bit, just enough to take the edge off. But he was taking, I don't even know, heaping spoonfuls of it every day, every couple of hours,
Wow.
Yeah. So he quit that cold turkey. And I think with that and the AmpCoil and the nervous system retraining, I feel like those are the 3 things that, for me, I saw an apparent shift.
I'm manifesting a great year for your human 2020. It's going to be, I feel it. I really do. I feel it. I feel this is the year he's going to have a big shift. And then the other thing I want to ask, I want to be respectful of your time. We're almost at an hour here. Well, we're a little over, to be honest. But that's okay. People will listen. My question to you is, you have a practice in California, in the LA area, correct?
Yes.
If people want to come see you and do breath work or do AmpCoil or try some of the brilliant knowledge you've accumulated over the last 4.5 years through these experiences, 8 years if you count your own journey through breast cancer, which we barely touched on, how would they find you and where would they come work with you?
Thank you for asking. So the best way right now, like the resource that I'm really using to get all my information out there and talk about my practice and the AmpCoil, and I'm really putting a lot of energy into at trying to educate people on the AmpCoil as well. And all of it is through Instagram. So Apotheca 5, which is APOTHEKA and the number 5. I'm working on my website right now, and hopefully it'll be up in like the next month. or people can just text me. I work out of my home, and I always invite people, even though I can kind of hear yappy dogs right now sometimes, but it's actually relatively for LA quiet here. Altadena is nestled in the foothills of the mountains, and it's just a really sweet, sweet spot. So I encourage people to come here because I've intentionally curated my space. So when people come in, feels very sacred. When people come in, immediately walk through my door, most people are just like, and so it's really a good idea for them to get out of their space and to be able to come in. But I also know that LA is challenging with traffic, especially West Siders. I am trying to figure out how I can spend a day or two a month on the West Side, at least with the AmpCoil. I'm actually meeting with a chiropractor tomorrow about potentially on the West Side, about potentially maybe being in his office with the AmpCoil 1 or 2 days a month. So right now, I think if people can make it and kind of like there's hiking around here, and give themselves a half a day to just take care of themselves and really really reset their nervous system. It's not like a regular massage that you can go to a spa and get. It's really an hour and a half to 2 hours on my table with the intention to come out of fight or flight and really just breathe and leave that the stress and anxiety and everything behind. So sometimes I start my sessions on the table with breath work, and then so it's either body work and energy work by itself. Sometimes I'll layer in breath work, and then what I call the works is when I also incorporate the AmpCoil, and they can get all of that all at once.
I love it. I need that.
I do too.
I love that. Well, I've got to ask you my final question here. And I'm just go ahead and let your slate clean for a second. I want your take on this Beautifully Broken podcast. What does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
The image that comes to mind, and I can't remember what it's called, is the Japanese art when a plate or a bowl breaks, a porcelain plate or bowl breaks. There's an art form in Japan where they don't throw it away, but they put it back together with gold. So the veins where everything was broken has gold in it, and it's even more beautiful than it was before it broke. And so for me, I feel that when we go through experiences in life where we really feel like I'm broken right now, really, I think I'm broken, and I've definitely said those words, and then you come out of it, it's like you've taken a layer of old skin off, and you're just this more beautiful version of yourself. You're closer to your true essence.
I love that. I love that. I want to ask you one more question. Some people get off with one, some people get off with two. My last question for you would be, if you could give someone at home that is also a caregiver and they feel like they're struggling for air, they feel like they're drowning a little bit, what advice would you give that person to find their breath, to find some solid ground where they feel like they can operate from?
Our own healing is imperative for the collective healing, and to be able to truly offer support for anybody, we have to offer support to ourselves first. And I have really had to learn that the hard way. But I don't have any issues around putting myself first and taking care of myself anymore, especially because of my practice. In order to be able to give, I have to give to myself first. If there's a way Everybody digests words differently. And if there's a way in which I can communicate with people how imperative it is to put themselves first, especially if they have people in their lives that they love, that they feel like they want to be able to offer something to, that they need to put themselves first, to take care of themselves first, to check in with themselves throughout the day. Like a habit that I learned when I actually had cancer was to check in with myself throughout the day and just be like, how are you feeling right now? And I often found that if I was feeling anxious about something, and then I would trace it back to what was making me feel anxious, it was nothing, not worth me feeling anxious about, but I just needed to become conscious of it so that I could let it go. And just to be able to incorporate little practices in your life, tiny little rituals, nothing that disrupts your life, but just to create these habits in which you're just checking in with yourself the way you would check in with a friend who's going through something. And like, what do you need right now? What do I need right now? I just need to take a deep breath. I need to take a walk. I need to lay down for 30 seconds, whatever it might be, like just to find the habit to just nurture yourself in those little ways throughout the day so that we can truly offer what our gifts are to other people from a place that's not depleting us.
That was beautiful. Anna, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a guest of the show. I can't wait for people to hear this episode. And I thank you for being so vulnerable with your story and your experience. And I know it's going to help. I know it's going to resonate with many people out there, but I especially know those caregivers in the audience. It feels so good to just be heard and to know that you're honored. And then I'll end with, to all my caregivers, thank you. You guys mean the world to me. You meant the world to me. You've done everything for me. And I wouldn't be here without my caregivers, period. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I honor you in this breath. And thank you for being on the podcast. Namaste. Ladies and gentlemen, you made it to the end of the podcast. Now, in a world where the average attention span is less than 10 seconds, we just spent almost an hour together. And I think this is the beginning of something really beautiful. Now, one way to support the podcast is to head over to freddiesetgo.com and check out my newly launched page, Freddie's Faves, where I've linked every 5-star product and healing modality you hear about on the show. Most offer significant discounts by clicking the link. And please know, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and at the same time, they support the show through affiliation. So check out Freddie's Faves on freddiesetgo.com. This episode of the Beautifully Broken podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, AmpCoil, upgrading the vibrations of hearts, minds, and bodies all over the world. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. Grabbing a download is like giving this virtual thumbs up that we're doing it right. And if you want to connect with me, shoot me a message on Instagram at freddiesetgo.com or at freddiesetgo. That's all for today. Our closing. The world is hurting. We need you at your very best. So take the steps today to always be upgrading, whatever it takes to move the needle. Remember, while life is pain, putting those fractured pieces back together is a beautiful process. I'm your host. I love you. Namaste. Have a wonderful day.